Did you know that acts of intimacy, like oral sex, can be the key to strengthening a relationship, not just physically, but emotionally? Studies show that couples who connect in this way often have deeper and longer-lasting bonds. But few truly understand what this means for a relationship. Now, imagine this scene: a couple sitting in silence. The air is tense, filled with unspoken words and repressed emotions. A simple gesture, perhaps a touch, a lingering gaze, changes everything. This moment holds something powerful, something we often overlook: the potential to restore lost connections. But there's more to this than you might think. Today, we'll explore the wisdom of a 92-year-old woman who has lived through decades of relationships, challenges, and lessons. She will share a transformative insight into how small, intimate gestures can not only save a relationship, but also deepen bonds of trust and love. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear might change the way you understand intimacy. And remember, it's often in the simplest details that we find the deepest answers. Our guide on this journey is a 92-year-old woman whose life has been marked by deep relationships and transformative reflections. She lives in a home full of memories: the faded photographs on the walls, the aroma of freshly brewed tea, and the gentle sound of birds outside invite us into her world. Every object around her carries stories of love, resilience, and learning. She takes us to the starting point, a seemingly ordinary moment that transformed her relationship. It was a day when the routine had become unbearable. Prolonged silences had become the couple's language, and the weight of unmet expectations threatened to unravel what they had built. But on that day, something changed. She recalls how a simple yet profoundly significant intimate gesture reconnected the couple. It wasn't just what was done, but what the act symbolized: the willingness to prioritize the other person, even amidst pain and uncertainty. It was as if that gesture silently said, "I'm still here. And I want to fight for this." We, as the audience, are the other main characters in this story. We are here to reflect, learn, and question ourselves. Have we been neglecting the small moments that could transform our own relationships? How can we relearn to connect with the people who matter most? The journey is just beginning. Get ready to dive even deeper, because the lessons that follow aren't just meant to be heard, they're meant to be lived. It was a night like any other, or so it seemed. The couple was at home, sitting on the couch, but the distance between them went far beyond the physical. The silence was heavy, almost tangible, as each seemed lost in their own thoughts. The protagonist describes this moment vividly. It felt like we were in the same place, but living in completely different worlds. Then, something unexpected happened. She got up and, without saying a word, did something that defied her own pride and hesitation. With a gentle touch on his shoulder, she broke the invisible barrier that had been keeping them apart. His reaction was initially one of surprise. He didn't expect the gesture, but instead of resisting, he accepted the silent invitation to reconnect. This moment wasn't just a physical act, it was a powerful message. I'm here. I still believe in us. That intimate gesture became the catalyst for a series of changes in their relationship. It brought buried emotions to the surface, forcing both to confront truths they had been avoiding for years. But this emotional awakening came with complications. The partner began opening up about how disconnected he had been feeling. But there was a problem. Communication was not something he excelled at. For him, showing vulnerability was uncharted territory. On the other hand, she wrestled with her own fear of rejection and doubt. Would this gesture be enough to start the healing process? This initial event, though simple, was the starting point for a transformation. It opened the door to difficult yet necessary conversations. However, each dialogue felt like walking a tightrope, full of tension but also hope. The protagonist describes it as a step into the unknown, but a step that had to be taken, and so the journey began. But greater challenges lay ahead. The next obstacle would be discovering whether gestures and words would be enough to overcome the barriers built over time. As the days passed, the effects of that initial gesture began to unfold. The couple now found themselves at a crossroads. What would they do with the connection that was beginning to rebuild? It was as if they had discovered a loose thread in a worn tapestry. The thread was there, but they had to decide together whether to pull it and reveal something new or leave it untouched, fearing what they might find. The first obstacle emerged quickly. The routine of daily life seemed to conspire against them. Misaligned schedules, endless tasks, and external responsibilities threatened to overshadow any emotional progress they had made. But the greatest challenge wasn't in the outside world. It resided within each of them. She began questioning whether she was trying too hard. Did he notice? Did he value it? On the other hand, he struggled with his own reluctance to express what he felt. For him, showing affection felt like a rusty skill. These internal conflicts manifested in small misunderstandings, but also in moments of deep introspection. As the challenges mounted, the two began adopting strategies to cope. She decided to invest in small gestures, handwritten notes, spontaneous compliments, or simply holding his hand during unexpected moments. He, in turn, started doing something he had never done before, truly listening. Not just to the words, but to the emotions behind them. However, the consequences of these efforts were unpredictable. Some attempts were misinterpreted, leading to new tensions. Others, however, opened the door to moments of genuine connection. It was as if each obstacle was a test, not just of love, but of resilience, and then came a critical decision. Both realized they needed to change their approaches. It wasn't enough to simply try. They needed to be vulnerable, honest, and most importantly, consistent. This was the moment when they understood that they weren't just rebuilding a relationship, but also redefining their own identities within it. What came next would be even more challenging. The vulnerability that was beginning to bloom would lead them to an unexpected confrontation, a moment that could either strengthen them or separate them forever. The turning point came on what seemed like an ordinary evening, but it would change everything. During a casual conversation, her partner hesitantly shared something he had been carrying for years. He admitted that, for him, physical intimacy had always been an easier way to express himself than words. "I've never known how to say how I feel," he confessed. "But sometimes, I'm afraid that even this isn't enough." Those words, though simple, struck the protagonist deeply. She realized that it wasn't a lack of feeling or effort creating the barrier between them. It was his internal struggle to translate emotions into gestures or words. At the same time, it exposed a bigger challenge. She had also been harboring resentment, small emotional wounds accumulated over time, which made it harder for her to receive what he was trying to offer. This conversation was a watershed moment. It brought clarity, but also intensified their conflicts. Both began to reflect on their insecurities, which now seemed magnified. He feared that he would never be able to provide the emotional connection she longed for. She, in turn, felt the weight of carrying the role of the bridge between them, a responsibility that was starting to wear her down. Arguments became more frequent, but they also became more honest. It was as though every confrontation forced them to look deeper into their flaws and fears. At one point, she voiced something she had avoided for a long time. "I need to feel that we're in this together, for real. I can't be the only one trying," he, shaken, responded, "and I need to learn how to show you that I'm here, even when I don't know how." This exchange of vulnerabilities brought both pain and hope. But the weight of expectations and fears turned the relationship into an emotional battleground where every victory seemed to cost more than they expected. They were on the brink of a decision: retreat into the comfort of silence or confront the wounds that were holding them back. What came next would be decisive for the couple's future. The moment of greatest tension came during an argument that started over something seemingly trivial, a disagreement about weekend plans. But, as with most storms, it wasn't the subject itself that mattered, but what lay beneath it. Pressured, her partner blurted out, "Why do you always expect me to know what to do? It's not easy for me." And she, without hesitation, replied, "Because I feel like I've been alone in this for a long time." These words marked the darkest point of their journey. For the first time, both verbalized what had truly been bothering them, but the weight of these revelations felt crushing. The silence that followed was filled with doubt. Was this the moment when everything would fall apart? Then something unexpected happened. Instead of fleeing or retreating, the protagonist decided to try something different. With tears in her eyes, she said, "I don't expect you to know everything. I just need to feel that you're willing to try, and I want to try too." Her tone wasn't accusatory, but genuinely vulnerable. This shift broke through her partner's defensiveness. For the first time in years, he set aside his pride. With a trembling voice, he confessed, "I'm afraid of failing you, and sometimes I think trying is worse than doing nothing." These words were hard to say, but they marked a turning point. Both were finally being completely honest, not just with each other, but with themselves. The climax wasn't defined by a grand reconciliation or magical solution, but by something deeper. The decision to keep fighting, even when giving up, seemed easier. They made an unspoken pact that, despite the challenges, each would do their part to rebuild what they had lost. When the confrontation ended, the couple emerged with something new. It wasn't perfection, but a mutual understanding that both had an active role to play in the relationship. This set the stage for the resolution, a journey where love was less about grand gestures and more about the daily choices to remain connected. When the storm finally settled, something shifted. It wasn't just the relief of a resolved argument, but the realization that for the first time in years, both were willing to work together. The silence that once felt oppressive now became a safe space for reflection. They had crossed the most challenging point, not just as a couple, but as individuals who chose to confront their fears and limitations. The protagonist realized that true transformation didn't lie in grand gestures, but in daily choices, small moments, like an unexpected thank you or a glance of understanding, began to fill the gaps once occupied by resentment. She came to understand that intimacy isn't a finish line, but a path built through mutual effort. Her partner, on the other hand, began to show his commitment in simple yet powerful ways. He started asking how she felt, listening attentively, and showing his presence, even in his own vulnerability. These changes weren't easy or immediate, but every effort was like a brick laid in the rebuilding of something they believed in. At the end of the journey, the couple didn't emerge as an idealized version of themselves. Instead, they became something more real, two people willing to keep trying, even when the circumstances were difficult. The 92-year-old woman, as she concluded her story, looked directly at the camera, or perhaps directly at the viewer, and left a final reflection. Intimacy isn't about perfection. It's about creating a space where you can be vulnerable, where love and respect intertwine to build something worth fighting for. And that fight begins with the choices you make today. She paused, letting her words sink in before issuing an invitation to the audience. And you? What are you willing to do to strengthen your relationships? What will be your next step in creating a deeper connection with the one you love? If this message resonated with you, like this video and share it with someone special. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that can transform lives. Your support makes all the difference.